Hello Swordmasters and Hunters, Aaron here, back with another video. Oyo also back at it again with another direct power creep of a 1.x character since they're running out of ideas already. Let me introduce you to Yunli, acting as a direct power creep version of Clara. But is there any difference between her and Clara? In what ways is she better? Does she work in the exact same setup? Before I answer those questions, I just have to say that if you do like my content, why not take a bite out of that almond cookie flavored subscribe button down below. But with the begging done, let's smash our way right into the overview. Yunli as a unit is a tanky main DPS who focuses on forcing the enemy to hit her in order to deal massive counterattack damage. Yunli's basic attack deals physical damage to one enemy with no other interesting mechanic. Her skill is different as it will deal physical blast damage, with the blast damage dealing half the damage dealt to the main targeted enemy. Additionally, Yunli will be healed based on her attack after using her skill. Yunli's ult is very wordy, but it's super simple in practice. When Yunli uses her ultimate, she enters a parry stance and taunts enemies until the end of the next turn. Additionally, her next counter is enhanced, gaining an extra 100% critical damage, dealing huge damage to a single target and half that damage as blast damage. This counter is called Inuit Slash. If she is attacked during her parry stance, the next counter she deals, which would be right after the attack, would additionally fire off 6 extra instances of damage at random enemies. When Inuit Slash has this 6 extra instances of damage, it is referred to as Inuit Coal. The counterattacks from this ultimate count as ultimate damage as well as follow-up attack damage and benefit from all the buffs and mechanics that deal with them. Yunli's talent has her fling her massive claymore at the enemy when she is hit by an attack, dealing physical blast damage. This damage is considered as a counter and also a follow-up attack. Additionally, when Yunli is hit by an attack, she will generate 15 energy to herself. This energy increase is dramatic, since when she is hit by an attack, she would receive 10 energy from the counter, 15 energy on average from getting hit by an enemy, and 15 more energy from this talent, netting her a total of 40 energy average after being hit by an attack. That's a lot of energy. Yunli's technique has her gain a buff for 20 seconds that allows her to activate Inuit Coal on a random enemy at the start of the next battle. This attack will also deal 80% more damage. Yunli's Ascension 2 trace guarantees that the next cast of her ultimate is an Inuit Coal if the first one becomes an Inuit Slash. This massively boosts her damage if you're mistiming her ultimates, as it would boost her Inuit Coal activation floor from 0% to 50%. Yunli's Ascension 4 trace grants her immunity to CC and 20% damage mitigation while her parry stance is active, guaranteeing that her ultimate goes off. Yunli's final Ascension 6 trace increases Yunli's attack by 30% for 1 turn after she uses a counter. Due to her being slow and due to her always triggering counters, this effect will almost always be active. In terms of trace priority, you should level her ultimate first, since that's where about 75% of her total damage output will come from. After, her talents, counters, and skill can be leveled together. Her talent will deal more damage, but the healing from her skill does go a long way toward keeping her alive. If you'd like a preference, her talent is better for damage than her skill. After those two, you can completely ignore her basic attacks, as you will most likely use them sparingly. In terms of rotations, to use Yunli at maximum efficiency, spam her skill every turn to get the most damage, energy, and healing out of her. When her ultimate is up, wait for the turn that you know the enemy will attack on to use it. Her damage lives and dies by her Inuit Coal counters. If not used efficiently, she will be no better than Clara, but when perfected, she can contend with some of the best DPS in the game. Use her counters well and you will be rewarded. Yunli has a lot of power in her base kit that gets even better with Eidolons. Yunli's first Eidolon increases the crit damage for ultimate by 20% and additionally increases the amount of additional hits on her Inuit Coal counter from 6 to 9. These few additional hits, oddly enough, lead to the largest raw damage increase that Yunli has in her Eidolons. This Eidolon is so powerful that it is debatably her best Eidolon and is my recommended stopping point for her. Yunli's E2 lets every single source of counter damage she has ignore 20% of the enemy's defense. This does sound good, but this only includes her counter damage. Her total damage output includes her skill too, which gains no benefit whatsoever from the defense ignore, making it just worse than an Eidolon like Ruan May's E1, Robin's E1, or Sparkle's E2 for her. Yunli's E3 increases her basic attack level by 1 and ultimate level by 2. The most beneficial part of this Eidolon is the increase in scaling it grants her main damage source. Despite that increase, it's still not that great. Yunli's E4 gives her effectively a permanent 50% effect res buff. This, in tandem with the CC immunity she has on her parries, will reduce the frustration that would come with using her against CC bots while also making her more consistent. Yunli's E5 increases her skill and talent multiplier level by by 2. This will increase her damage by so little that it would have no meaningful impact on her damage output. Yunli's E6's buffs can be broken down into 2 parts: the buffs that are conditionally effective and the buffs that are always effective. The conditionally effective buffs this Eidolon offers are the guaranteed Inuit Cull on every ultimate and the 15% more crit rate on her Inuit counters. The former is only beneficial to those that struggled using her counters effectively, while the latter is only beneficial to those who didn't build a lot of crit rate on Yunli. The only buff that's constantly effective is the 20% resistance penetration on her Inuit counters. This means that this Eidolon can see a wide variance in usefulness depending on the situation. If only gaining the benefit of the resistance pen, then this Eidolon would net about a 19% damage increase, which is lower than her first Eidolon. However, if you were struggling with both relics and using her kit, then she can see up to a 73% damage increase. This is the largest issue with her E6, as it will do no better than Robin's E1 would if you're already good at the game, and instead serves as a pay-for-convenience measure for those that can't be bothered to learn. All around, Yunli doesn't have very beneficial Eidolons. Her best stopping point is her E1, since a little after that, other than her E6, does much for her. Eidolon 1 is her best and contends with her signature Lightcone in terms of value for her. Her E6 might contend for her best, but it's not worth getting since the damage increase from E0 to E2 is almost the same as the increase from E2 to E6. Most of her Eidolons really just aren't it. You're much better off going for Eidolon increases on the supports you plan to use with her than upgrading her past E1. But those are just her Eidolons. What about Yunli's Relic Sets? What does she use best? For starters, the Wind to Soaring Valorous is Yunli's best 4-piece set due to the 12% attack in the 2-piece effect, the 6% crit rate in the 4-piece, and the 36% ultimate damage bonus after the wielder uses a follow-up attack. Since Yunli's main follow-up attack also counts as ultimate damage for some reason, this will net her a solid 36% increase to 75% of her kit with 100% uptime. This relic set works perfectly with Yunli, making it her best in slot by quite a bit. The Ash Blazing Grand Duke is behind her best by only about 2.5% due to the massive attack buff that she'll receive from the 4-piece and the follow-up attack damage it offers in the 2-piece. However, she should never get the max attack bonus, and the amount would change depending on the content she's playing against, making it very unreliable. Her next best is Longevous Disciple, mostly due to the 4-piece effect that grants a large 8% crit rate boost after getting hit that stacks twice and lasts 2 turns. This solid 16% crit rate bonus is incredibly easy to top up and keep stacked due to her taunt, and it's applied to every part of her kit, unlike the damage bonus buff from her signature set. This set is so good for her that it's behind her signature by only about 3.5%, which is pretty good considering its sister set is the best support set in the game. For 2-piece relics, the 25% crit damage and follow-up attack damage from Durin makes it Yunli's best 2-piece relic set due to her ability to trigger follow-up attacks very quickly at the start of combat. The only other 2-piece relic set she can use well is Inert Salsodo, which offers 8% crit rate and 15% follow-up attack and ultimate damage. This sounds busted on Yunli because of the crit rate that she needs and the potential 30% damage her ultimate follow-up attacks would receive, but right now her ultimate only gains 15% damage bonus from this buff. Despite that sad fact, it's only behind Durin by about 4.4%, mainly due to the extra crit rate she desperately needs. For main stats, you're looking for the same ones that Clara would want: HP for the head, attack for the hands, crit on the body with a preference of crit rate, physical damage on the orb, and attack percent on the rope. Substitutions could be crit damage on the body, attack percent on the orb, and energy regen rate on the rope. Each are pretty decent in their own right, but they all come with a damage decrease toward her overall damage output. Changing the chest equates to a loss of about 9 crit substats, the attack orb equates to a loss of about 4 crit substats, and the rope is about equal to attack percent but can equate to a 2 crit substat loss at most. For substats, having a crit ratio of 1 to 2 is the absolute most important thing with this character. She can have up to 215% crit damage passively from her ult, her supports, and from Durin, and she'll get even more from her Lightcone, so make sure to give her a lot of crit rate. Most would want this number at 85% at the minimum, but I would recommend you go even higher, as close to that 100% crit rate as possible. After that, focus on crit damage, but due to the immense amount of crit damage available to her, it becomes oversaturated pretty easily. So, once at around 200% crit damage on her stats board, look for both crit damage and attack, as they offer very similar damage increases. In terms of Lightcone options, Yunli's best is her signature Dance at Sunset. This thing offers an aggro value of 5, unlike any other aggro increasing Lightcone, that's on par with Link's March 7th and Clara's own aggro increases. On top of that, it offers 36% crit damage and a 36% follow-up attack damage bonus, stacking up to 2 times for 2 turns after the wielder uses their ultimate. This light cone is incredibly powerful for Yunli, since she can easily maintain the time of the follow-up attack damage buff, and since it gives her an aggro increase, which she desperately needs. This light cone does so much for her that it would result in a similar damage increase to her first Eidolon. If you do plan to use Yunli, I highly suggest you use this light cone because it is just that insanely good for her. The next 3 light cones are all pretty much tied in value for her for different reasons. Under the Blue Sky is the first of these 3 due to the potentially large 24% crit rate buff it grants for 3 turns after defeating an enemy, and the unconditional 32% attack buff. The damage this light cone grants Yunli can be very random due to the crit rate buff's condition, which is why it's here, as it can perform even better than Unreachable Side and Brighter Than the Sun, or worse than the last weapon on this list. The reason as to why it's in this spot right here is because this is where it would average at between 100% uptime and 50% uptime on the passive. In pure fiction, this thing will be her second best light cone, but outside of that mode, it will take a pretty significant hit in usability on her. The Unreachable Side is Blade's signature light cone and offers 18% crit rate, 18% HP, and 24% damage bonus on one attack after the wearer loses health or is hit. This light cone does very well for Yunli due to the crit rate bonus and 24% damage bonus on most of her damage. However, this damage increase can vary heavily based on the content to the point that it's not super reliable. This means that while it might technically have a larger average damage than Brighter Than the Sun, it will prove to be worse in situations where Yunli cannot use the passive much. Brighter Than the Sun is the last of these 3 as it offers a good 18% crit rate buff, plus an 18% attack bonus and 6% energy regen rate bonus after using a basic attack lasting 2 turns, and that stacks up to 2 times. This requirement means that Yunli needs to go SP neutral, which turns out to be a rather hefty decrease in her damage output. It would have been super strong for her, but Yunli loses out on so much damage and sustain from not being able to use the passive of the light cone and her skill to the fullest. Next is something irreplaceable, which is Clara's signature light cone that offers an unconditional 24% attack buff. On top of that, it grants extra healing based on the wearer's attack once per turn and 24% damage bonus for 1 turn, both activating when the wearer defeats an enemy or is hit. This light cone is strong for the constant raw damage and extra sustain it provides, and will be one of the best options that Yunli has at her disposal. I Shall Be My Own Sword is also a great option, mainly for the crit damage. However, its passive will be incredibly unreliable to the point that it's not worth getting just for Yunli. The Fall of an Aeon is her best free-to-play light cone available due to the large 64% attack buff that Yunli can easily stack up. While she usually won't have the 24% damage buff from weakness breaking an enemy, the large attack stat will usually be enough to carry this light cone for her. If you don't have any of these at the ready for her, the next ones are decent substitutes that I will run through real quick. Indelible Promise is amazing for the huge 30% crit rate boost for 2 turns after using her ultimate. Since she can cast her ultimate quite frequently due to its low cost, 2 charges, and her large energy generation, she can easily obtain 100% uptime on this passive, making it incredibly valuable for her. The Moles Welcome You is a great attack stat stick that is just a worse version of On the Fall of an Aeon. And the last 3, Wolf Walk Time, Nowhere to Run, and A Secret Vow are all super conditional while not performing too well. Now, before we discuss team comps she has at her disposal, I think it's best to mention some synergies she has first. Huo is the first very strong support for Yunli due to the large attack buff and team-wide energy generation she grants the team. Since Yunli's max energy also counts as 240 and not 120, Yunli would get 8 or a bit more than a third of her ultimate charge back. On top of that, Huo uses Shared Feeling and Quid Pro Quo very well, which massively helps Yunli get her ultimate back for even more follow-up attacks. These two are incredible together and will be one of the best duos that Yunli has. However, Lynx is debatably an even stronger support for Yunli, mainly due to her taunt value increase. This type of buff is so powerful for Yunli since she has no innate consistent aggro increase, plus due to the massive energy and therefore damage she receives. That's one of the reasons as to why Dance at Sunset offers such a large power spike for Yunli. It also just so happens to be what makes Lynx Yunli's best support when she's without her signature light cone. On top of that, Lynx uses Quid Pro Quo and Shared Feeling just as well as Huo does. This enables Lynx to function as both a team-wide battery and also a powerful aggro buffer. She's so good with Yunli that the only reason there is to swap her out is if you're using Robin alongside a Yunli with her signature light cone, as this duo would prefer Huo over Lynx any day. Speaking of, up next is Robin, who offers Yunli a large attack buff and a crap ton of crit damage. On top of that, Robin grants the team more turns, which leads to more sustain for Yunli since she would use her skill more often. Robin is also physically obstacle, so she can wield the Planetary Rendezvous Lightcone and or the Pinacone 2-piece set to buff Yunli's damage percent even further. Tingyun is the final character to mention due to the major battery, damage percent, attack buff, and additional damage she provides. All of these buffs keep her toward the top of the support pyramid since no one else can do what she can. Yunli is extremely similar to Clara, and as such, she'd work in the same teams that Clara would. Up first is using Yunli as a hypercarry main DPS. This would always include Tingyun for the single target buffing potential and ultimate battery as a base. Then pair her with your preferred buffing support and defensive character and you'll be set. Little else is really needed to get these comps rolling. It offers super high damage while also being relatively safe due to Yunli's stuns and healing. This will be the staple for many out there, and it's for good reason. Yunli also has follow-up attack specific teams that she synergizes well with. The main difference between this comp and the last is the swap from Tingyun to Topaz, and a team-wide buffer for the both of them. Yunli can perform even better than Clara can here because she always taunts the enemies toward her, and she always uses a follow-up attack when she uses her ultimate. Topaz becomes much more consistent with this team than the Clara variant, which, when paired with a team-wide buffer, is what will really put these comps above most others. Now, before I end the video off, I want to mention Yunli's pull value and how well she compares to her standard banner counterpart, Clara. Both Clara and Yunli are similar in baseline power level at a free-to-play level of investment. This might be a major turnoff for many of those out there. However, Yunli has the massive upside that she is super consistent and controlled, while Clara is left completely at the mercy of RNG. This is the main difference between the two at E0 S0, as Yunli can have a much higher peak damage output than Clara can if you know the enemy attack patterns and parry them effectively. Clara's ability to deal damage is up to chance if she's not at E6, which means she can struggle severely against enemies that are not aggressive. Yunli does not have this issue, as her damage is tied to her ultimate's follow-up attacks, which will always come crashing down. While they won't always deal the damage that her Inuit Coal damage does, they will always transform into Inuit Coal after an Inuit slash is dealt. This makes her much more consistent against slower enemies, CC bots, or in single target content. So while she may just be another Clara in many situations, she can prove to be a decent to large upgrade in situations that lack aggressive enemies and in situations where you're able to micromanage her. It's so much so that if you do like to act a little sweaty, Yunli has the potential to deal such large and consistent bouts of damage that at max potential, she will be a contender for a spot in the top 5 best DPS units in the game. But that's all I have to say on Yunli. Now I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think of her? Do you plan to get her or her Lightcone or both? Are you going for any Eidolons? What teams do you plan to use with her? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. With that, I will get out of your hair. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye bye!